Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Let's go ahead and get started with our grocery shopping smart and savvy webinar. This will be recorded and posted on the Live Life Well YouTube page. But for everyone that has registered, you will be getting a copy of the recording as well as these presentation slides emailed to you following the webinar. So thanks for joining me during what is most likely your lunch break today. And we're going to be talking about food. So that's sure to make you hungry. So feel free to have lunch as we chat today. Again, my name is Kate Watts. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with the Live Life Well employee well-being team here at Cone Health. And so I'm excited to bring this webinar to you today. We are giving this webinar live in March, which is National Nutrition Month. And we hear a lot from people we interact with that it's really hard to eat healthy because of the cost. And it's actually the most common reason that people report not eating nutrition foods, and that is due to the cost of healthful foods. So we want to dig into that a little bit today. How can we put into effect some budget-friendly tips for grocery shopping to help support our health goals? So if you have questions or comments as we go along through today, feel free to open up that chat box and type them there. I will keep an eye on that. So the question is, are healthy foods really more expensive? And they've done some research on this, and we do know that healthy foods are definitely more expensive within restaurants because fresher whole ingredients that have a limited shelf life are going to be more expensive, especially if they have traveled from far away. So if they are not in season or they are not local, compared to packaged processed foods that are going to have a longer shelf life. So when research has looked into what that difference is for us if we are shopping for grocery items, bringing them home and creating healthy meals or more processed meals at home, what does the difference in costs look like for those differences? And so we see the healthiest diets, which were made up of whole foods like fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, proteins. Um, the healthiest diets cost about $1.50 more per day than the least healthy diets, which were made up of more of the convenience items, frozen meals, more packaged processed items from the store. And this was due, according to a research study from the Harvard School of Public Health back in 2013. So when we think about $1.50 more per day to invest in healthy foods and invest in our health for the long term, we can contrast that with comparing the cost of managing chronic diseases. So an individual with no chronic diseases, so they're living without hypertension, high blood pressure, without diabetes, without kidney disease, um, they spend about $6,000 each year on healthcare expenses, and this is from 2015. Whereas an individual managing 3 to 4 chronic diseases spends $25,000 each year on healthcare expenses. So that's quite a difference there. Whereas we think about $1.50 difference a day adds up to about $550 a year more that we would spend on healthy foods than if we were getting more convenient style foods. So with that in mind, let's get into some practical tips for shopping, budgeting, and reducing food waste. So before we shop, we want to know our budget. Everyone's budget is going to be different, but we want to have a budget of some kind. And then we want to shop our kitchen, make a plan, and create a grocery list. So let's go through a few tips for each of these items. On average, food waste costs individuals $390 per year. So that's food that we are throwing in the trash, money we're throwing away. And so this would, and that's per individual. So this would end up being over $1,500 per year for a family of four. So we know that by reducing food waste, we can reduce the amount of money that we spend on healthy foods. And as mentioned before, healthy foods have a shorter shelf life. So we're going to talk about tips at the very end of today for making sure to keep produce as fresh as possible in the way that we store it. But first, we want to start out by shopping our kitchen. So when we do this first, it helps cut down on food waste because we see what we already have and we can visualize what we need to use up that coming week, and we can incorporate that into our meal plan. It's going to save us money because, again, we're shopping our own kitchen, and so then we're just supplementing in with ingredients we need to complete our meals. And so we're not letting food go bad and purchasing all the ingredients for a completely separate type of recipe or type of cuisine, right? We are making sure we're using up what we have on hand before it goes bad. So start with the refrigerator first, because this is where your most perishable items are going to be. And then we can go into our freezer and pantry to see what we have on hand. We encourage you, if you are not used to this process of shopping your kitchen before you go to the grocery store, we encourage you to take inventory of what you already have on hand in your cooking space. And so anywhere you're keeping food stored. And you can skip writing down like every single staple item, every single spice or herb or condiment that you have. But you can just note if you're running low on those things as you do an inventory. And we'll talk a little bit later about keeping your kitchen stocked up with these items to, again, make it easier to throw together meals with what you have and limit food waste. So then we want to make a plan. Now that we've shopped our kitchen, making a plan is going to help us prioritize any goals that we have. So maybe our goal is to save money. Maybe our goal is more around our health. So maybe we are wanting to choose more healthful foods to lower our blood pressure or to manage our blood sugar. We also can save time and money by planning ahead, and it's going to really help reduce stress around meal times. When you have a plan, you don't have to make all of those decisions in the moment amongst a busy, hectic day. And it can be fun and delicious. So, I mean, obviously, I love talking about food and experimenting with food and recipes. That's why I'm a dietitian. And so it really can be fun to take a little bit of time to get creative and to challenge yourself with, okay, how can I use what's in my kitchen? A little bit of like that cooking show Chopped, right? I've got these random ingredients. How can I put them together into a delicious meal? So, it can be fun. Choose your recipes and meal ideas. So now that we've done an inventory of what we have on hand, we're going to review our ingredients and begin to plan what meals we would like to see for the following week. So do any meals come to mind? And you don't have to do very structured meal planning if that's not your preference. It's more of just a quick visual inventory of what do I have, what's going to go bad, what do I need to use up, and then just naturally what kind of meals would I or would my family typically use that ingredient in? And so then thinking about what meals come to mind, now I'm going to note down what ingredients I'm going to need to complete that meal. So think about also planning meals that can incorporate leftovers into your week so that you're not cooking every single night. Thinking about meals that allow for foods to be reused. So maybe you would prepare like a cooked protein, starch, and vegetable one night, and then the next night you can incorporate that into more of a mixed dish, like a stir fry or a casserole or tacos or an omelet. So versus making the mixed dish the first night and then it's already all combined, and that's what you're going to be eating leftovers of over and over. So thinking about separate components and then putting them into leftovers into mixed meals. So how can I use up foods that may spoil quickly? And so if we are purchasing fresh produce, which is great, and I highly encourage that we're making sure to get that washed and cut up and easily accessible for us to use up as soon as we can. So some of the recipe resources I listed here, you'll have in the copy of the slides. And if you're viewing this on our YouTube channel, I'm going to have these in the description below for you to visit. This is a great variety of recipe resources. So hopefully one or two really stick out to what your personal eating style is or your personal goals, or maybe you just want to get curious and try something new. So we've got a good variety of recipes here for you to get a little bit of inspiration, because sometimes we're looking around the kitchen at what we have and we don't even know where to start. And so going to the internet and typing in ingredients you have, finding recipes that will use up what you have can be a great way to get inspired with your meals. The next step is to make our shopping list. So now that we have our kind of brainstorm of what we want to cook, what we want to snack on throughout the week. Maybe we have pulled a couple recipes specifically from our family favorites or from something we find online. And if you want to fully menu plan at this point, you may even look at your calendar and decide what nights you're going to prepare which dishes. So consulting our on-hand food list, what we already have, now we're going to write down what we need to buy and make our shopping list, being sure to add in any staple items that you may be running low on. And I really encourage you to write down a shopping list. Even if you're shopping online, which we're going to talk about, have a list that you're following. That's also really important for being a savvy shopper. When you shop, bring that shopping list and stick to it. Shop the perimeter of the store, use nutrition labels to help you make individual choices between brands of different ingredients or types of foods you're purchasing. Compare prices as you shop. We're going to go over some tips for that. Buying in season, and the golden rule of grocery shopping: don't go hungry. Everyone knows what happens when we go to the grocery store hungry, right? All those impulse buys end up in our cart. So make sure you've had a little snack or it's after a meal when you choose to go grocery shopping. So unplanned purchases while we're in the store increase our grocery bill by 10% on average. This is the importance of having a list and really trying to stick to it. And this is the importance of going when we are comfortably full and not hungry. When we're talking about shopping the perimeter of the store, we're talking about hitting all of our major food groups, but in the less processed areas where they are offered. So our middle aisles tend to be more of our packaged items, and we'll still need to go through for some non-perishable groceries like our herbs and spices, oils, things like that. But if you can, start out by going around the perimeter of your grocery store. Typically, we're going to see a produce section with fruits and vegetables. We'll get to a bakery section with fresher breads. We'll get to a meat, deli, and seafood cabinet, and then a dairy section and our frozen foods. So these outside areas of the store are going to have more of those fresh, wholesome ingredients that we're encouraging for better health outcomes. What are our grocery goals? Well, if we want to just keep it simple, let's choose mostly whole real foods and let's choose a variety of colorful foods. So trying to get as much color as you can throughout your week. So that means variety across and within food groups, especially when it comes to fruits and vegetables, choosing different colors so that we get that rainbow in our cart and then in our kitchens at home. When we're talking about variety and color, a tool that is really popular is the portion plate. And this actually replaced the food pyramid that you may have grown up learning your food groups as the food pyramid. That is how I learned my food groups. Now we use the portion plate. And I really like this because we can kind of visualize as we're thinking through our meals and how balanced they are. It helps us visualize what types of foods should be on the plate and also think about the portions relative to each other. So the challenge for most people is filling up half of our plate with non-starchy vegetables. And then the other half of that plate is going to be filled with our lean proteins and our grains and starches, preferably whole grains. We'll go into those in just a few slides here. And so with the idea of the portion plate in mind, we can kind of also use this not only with meal planning, but our grocery cart. So visualizing, do I have a few different options for fresh vegetables and fruits for my week? Do I have some grains that are going to help fill up my meals, give me great energy, be the base of a lot of my meals? Do I have some good protein sources and a variety of protein? If I do consume meats, or animal proteins, have I included maybe some seafood for the week? Have I included some vegetarian proteins, some beans or lentils or nuts or seeds. So kind of like this visual of a portion plated grocery shopping cart. And just imagine if you went into the grocery store and the grocery carts actually looked like this and they were color coded and labeled. Would it change the way you added items to your cart, trying to have enough vegetables and fruits for the week? I think that's an entertaining idea. I think it would personally help me. I'm a very visual person, right? So visualize your meals for the week. Visualize, okay, am I stocked up with a proper amount of ingredients that fit these food groups? So just some specific recommendations from the American guidelines. Eating the rainbow, that means a variety of vegetables. 4 to 5 servings per day is what's recommended. If you're nowhere close to that, start with 1 or 2 as a goal. 1 or 2 vegetables a day. And again, choose different colors because each color of food is actually from the phytonutrients inside of that food, meaning that similar colored foods have similar nutrition, and that our orange fruits and vegetables are going to have different vitamins and minerals than our green, dark leafy greens versus our purples and our reds. So it's good to get that variety to ensure you're getting all the nutrition that your body needs. With fruits, we encourage whole fruits as much as possible and less of the processed juices, for example, canned fruits and heavy syrup, trying to go for the whole natural fruit when we can. 2 to 3 servings per day is the recommended amount. For whole grains, so for our grains and the base of our meal, our starches of our meal, let's think about how we can incorporate more whole grains. So unprocessed whole grains, things like oats, things like whole wheat pastas, lightly processed whole grains, and then getting into things like whole wheat tortillas, whole wheat bread, and limiting our more refined pastas, noodles, crackers, snack items that have been stripped of a lot of its beneficial fiber as well as some of its nutrients, and is going to impact our blood sugar much differently than our whole grains. Whole grains are also something that have been well studied in terms of reducing our risk of cardiovascular disease. So they're also great for our heart health. For proteins, again, choosing a variety of proteins, but trying to choose leaner protein options, lower fat protein options. This would be things like our vegetarian proteins, like beans, nuts, and seeds, our fish and seafood, our leaner poultry, especially when it is skinless, our eggs and fat-free dairy foods, our leaner red meats like cuts of sirloin or tenderloin, and then limiting our higher fat proteins like darker meats, meats that have been fried, higher fat dairy, and then especially trying to limit our purchases of really highly processed meat, things like hot dogs and bologna and other deli meats. Then our last category is our fats. So shopping for heart healthy fats encourages us to choose more plant-based fats, things that are typically going to be oils or liquid at room temperature, like our olive oils, our avocado oils, grapeseed oils, and then limiting our saturated fats. So less of those fats that are solid at room temperature. We'll look at these on the nutrition label as well. So this is a great tool when you're grocery shopping. And if you're not familiar with nutrition facts, I encourage you to start with the products that are already in your home and do a little practice reading labels while you're not rushed or trying to, get through the grocery store. I have spent many times many extra minutes in the grocery store comparing nutrition labels. Um, but if you're trying to do this in a timely fashion, I think starting at home and getting comfortable with nutrition facts labels is a good idea because there's a lot of information on here and it can be a really great tool to make decisions around food especially in regards to your health goals. But because there's so much information, it can be a little confusing. So I always recommend that you kind of choose one or two items that are most important to you. All of us need to look at the serving size because the serving size is not standardized. So that food company can choose whatever serving size they want to include. So it's not the amount that you should eat of that food. It's simply telling you that for that amount of food, you see all of these numbers below, that is the amount of nutrition within that serving size. So if you're eating more or less than the serving size, you'll have to do a little bit of math to know how many calories, grams of fat, milligrams of sodium are going into your body. Okay, so for 1 cup of this food, we see that we are getting 250 calories, 3 grams of saturated fat, 470 milligrams of sodium, 0 grams of fiber, 5 grams of sugar, 5 grams of protein. I skipped over a few here, but what I'm wanting to get at is that for our saturated fats, we're wanting to limit those. Those are those unhealthy fats that hurt our heart, and we're wanting to increase unsaturated fats, which would also be listed under total fat on the label. Those are going to be your oils and your more heart healthy fats. For sodium, we're wanting to limit sodium for our heart health, especially for our blood pressure. For fiber, we're wanting to increase fiber. That is a beneficial nutrient in many ways for our health. And for sugars, we're wanting to limit sugars, especially added sugars, which on a nutrition label you would see added sugars now included under total carbohydrate. And an easy rule for using the nutrition label. So say you're watching your blood pressure and you want to focus on sodium and you want to get less sodium. You can use this percent daily value down the right-hand side. Anything that is 5% or less of a percent daily value is considered low for that nutrient. So for sodium, that would be a positive thing, right? So we would want to look for low sodium foods with 5% or less of that percent daily value. If it's 20% or more, that's considered a high source of that nutrient in that food. So for this example, 20% sodium for our percent daily value means that this food item is pretty high in sodium. And if we're monitoring our blood pressure, we would probably want to put this item back and look for an alternative that is lower in sodium. Okay, let me know if you have questions about the nutrition label. There's a lot that can be said about a nutrition label, but since most of our packaged processed foods, since all of our packaged foods will have a label, it really is the best tool for knowing what is in those foods. Whereas our whole foods are often not going to have a label at all of our produce items. And so that's actually another way to think about choosing your foods when you're shopping is by choosing more whole foods with fewer ingredients, natural ingredients, ingredients in the ingredient list that we can understand, ingredients that we could recreate or prepare in our own kitchen. And that is how you know that that is considered a more whole food. So ingredient lists are listed on the packaged products, typically below or beside the nutrition label. And I've got an example here comparing a reduced fat peanut butter to a quote unquote natural peanut butter. And you can see the difference in the list of ingredients here. Some of our natural peanut butters simply contain peanuts. That's it. Or just peanuts and salt. Maybe peanut sugar and salt and oil. But even those ingredients I can understand, right? Versus something like a very highly processed peanut butter, which we see includes peanuts, corn syrup, solids, sugar, soy protein, salt, fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, mono and diglycerides, molasses, magnesium oxide, things we can't even pronounce, right? So the ingredients we would not have in our own kitchens. So that's going to be a more processed food. Probably better to go with a more natural food, right? So ingredient lists are something you can also use. And just another tip, the first ingredient is in this recipe in the highest amount, and the last ingredient is included in this product in the lowest amount. So the order in which you see items is important too. If you see sugar as the second ingredient, chances are if you went to that nutrition label, it's going to have a pretty high amount of sugar in the product. Something else to do at the store, compare prices. Shopping store brands can help lower our grocery bill. On average, they're 25% lower in price, and yet often are very similar in quality to their name brand counterparts. When we're shopping, we can check the unit price. So often we're looking at the retail price, what we're going to pay for that item. But if you want to compare between different sizes, like a bulk item versus a smaller packaged item, you want to look at the unit price. So in this example, our 32-ounce yogurt is only 5 cents per ounce, whereas our 6-ounce individual yogurt is 12 cents per ounce. So we can actually save money in the long run by going for the bigger bulked item in this case, if and only if you would be um, sure that you would be using up all of that item before it was to expire. So for some of us, a 6-ounce yogurt would be the better choice so that we're not wasting the majority of that 32 ounce. For others of us, if we eat yogurt every day and we're going to quickly go through that 32 ounces, buying the bigger bulk item is going to save us some money in the long run. Of course, we hear about buying in season, and this is because it saves us money and taste better. If it has to travel long distances and, with gas prices going up, those numbers get tagged onto our grocery bill. Where if it's local or it's in season, we're going to often pay less. Strawberries can actually be 100% more expensive in December than they are in the spring. And if you've tasted North Carolina strawberries, you know that they also are going to taste much better in season in the spring. So if it's not in season, if there's an ingredient you need and it's not in season, we can shop for frozen produce. This is a great affordable option that's been flash frozen at its peak ripeness and is going to be delicious and nutritious for us any time of year. We can also look for no salt added or low sodium canned versions of foods or ingredients we need, or you can find a seasonal substitution. So maybe there's a vegetable not in season and you can replace it with a seasonal vegetable within your recipe. So should we spend more on organic food? The quick answer is no. Nutritiously, they're going to all be the same. Now, when it comes to preservatives, additives, use of pesticides, we want to clean really well our produce that we're buying that's not organic to remove those residues. Now, you can also use this resource from ewg.org, which is the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And each year they release the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, which ranks produce items on which ones are the highest in pesticides and residues that we want to avoid, which would be the Dirty Dozen. Those will be the ones that if you did want to spend extra money on organic, you'd want to go organic on the Dirty Dozen, especially ones you consume a lot of. On the Clean 15, these are ones that are typically very low in measured residues, and so these would be ones you wouldn't maybe necessarily need to spend the extra money on organic for. So I'm going to speed through some tips for success as we wrap up here today, getting organized, trying online grocery shopping, learning how to choose and store produce, and some additional resources for you today. So organization really does equal sustainable success. If we're in a routine, we can be protective of our time, and that's going to ensure that we stick with some of these habits when it comes to budgeting, looking at what's on hand, reducing food waste, and just being a savvy grocery shopper. Another tip is to clean out the cupboards, pantry, and fridge. If you're kind of doing a rehaul on this at this point in your life, then it's a good idea to kind of start fresh, get that kitchen and workspace area clean and organized and inviting so that you want to get in there and cook healthy foods. Because remember, if we're purchasing healthy foods out to eat, we will be spending more. But if we're cooking healthy foods at home, we're really only committing to $1.50 more per day to have huge impacts and positive outcomes on our health goals. So, kind of the next step for many people once they get into a routine with grocery shopping is to keep their area stocked with their essentials. So, these are healthy items that go across all different food groups that really help us throw together meals in a pinch or help us complete meals with some of those perishable items that we're wanting to use up within our refrigerator or on our counters. What about online grocery shopping. I'm a big fan of online grocery shopping. It helps save time and money. It can be very convenient. It's a very convenient shopping experience. And I think it also, for a lot of people, helps reduce temptation of that impulse buying of unhealthy items that they're visually seeing as they walk around a physical grocery store. It also is a really great tool for helping you stay on budget because you can search the lowest price items. You can use electronic coupons and you can know your running total of your items before you check out. So it's very helpful if you are sticking to a tight budget for grocery shopping. And then if you're at home grocery shopping and you can't remember if you have something on hand already or not, you can run into your kitchen space and see if you have it. So it also, excuse me, also helps limit buying items in duplicate. So how do we store our produce to reduce waste? This is a really great resource I found online, actually, interestingly, through the New York Times. And I've shared 3 different slides here with you. I'm not going to go through each item, but you'll have these in your slides and you'll have the recording to review. Basically, the 3 main things they're looking at is temperature, moisture, and light. Exposure to light. And so it's very interesting to me all the different conditions to consider to really extend that shelf life for all these various food items. So that to me is very helpful to know how to store things properly to make sure that they last and don't go bad on you. Couple additional resources I'll leave you with today. So the American Heart Association has a grocery guide resource, and then there's also a meal planning toolkit on the Eat Smart, Move More, Weigh Less blog. They have a lot of printable, free resources if you are interested in going a little more in depth with your meal planning after you do or before you do your grocery shopping. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this was helpful information, and I hope you enjoy celebrating the rest of National Nutrition Month. Thank you so much. Have a great day.